I got into the Billionaire's car by mistake, and my bad luck was never the same. A journey of protective bad luck, deliverances, and true love. The car door opened without warning. A woman slid into the back seat, tossed her purse onto the leather upholstery, shut the door with the practiced ease of someone who did it every day, and blurted out, "Oh, thank goodness you got here so fast. Today's the most important day of my life. I'm finally meeting the love of my life. Step on it. I can't be late for anything in the world." Daniel Calloway, CEO of Nexus Holdings, 32 years old, in a charcoal gray suit and carrying the exhaustion of 4 consecutive meetings, raised his eyes from his phone. He opened his mouth. He closed it. The woman was already pointing toward the windshield, as if the avenue were a runway and she were about to take off. His name is Maurice, 32 years old, civil engineer. Brown eyes, a smile that melts you. We met on the app and he sent the most beautiful messages I've ever received. Honestly, I had to read them 3 times because I thought it was a scam. But it's not. He's real. Daniel tried to speak. "Sir." He chose the restaurant, Italian, candlelight. Who chooses a candlelit Italian restaurant on a Tuesday? A man who's serious. A man with a purpose. I'm not. And do you know what he said in his last message? "I can't wait to meet you. I can't wait." Seriously, the man can't wait. Do you have any idea what that means? Daniel checked the rearview mirror. Serena was gesturing with both hands, conducting an invisible orchestra. Her eyes shone with the kind of hope he hadn't seen in anyone for years. He did the most unlikely thing a billionaire CEO could do in that situation. He started the engine and accelerated. Serena adjusted her posture in the leather seat, murmuring toward the ceiling. "Universe, if this guy is a scoundrel, at least he has good taste in cars." Daniel checked the dashboard GPS. No address programmed. He didn't know the shortcuts. He had a private chauffeur for that, a chauffeur who was off duty. A chauffeur he had dismissed because he wanted, for the first time in months, to drive alone in silence for 20 minutes. 20 minutes of silence. The universe apparently had other plans. "Take a right here." Daniel turned. "Now take the second left." Daniel took it. "No, wait, the third. Or, the second? Oh, whatever, just go straight." I got confused. Daniel went straight and entered Central Avenue, which was closed for construction. The car stopped behind a line of traffic stretching 3 whole blocks. The traffic cones formed an orange barrier that seemed to laugh at the situation. A sign read "Detour, 4 kilometers," and below it someone had stuck a decal that read "Good luck." Serena leaned forward between the seats, tracking the dashboard clock. "You've got to be kidding me." The traffic didn't budge. "Can we cut through that street over there?" "That one's blocked too." "What about the other one?" "One-way street." "What if we—" "No." The minutes ticked by. 5, 10, 15. The line moved exactly 1.5 cars. Serena shifted from fragile optimism to direct negotiations with the dashboard. "Clock, for the love of all that's holy, stop ticking. I'm asking nicely." The clock didn't stop. "Universe, if you have any respect for me, make this traffic open up now." Now. The traffic didn't open. Serena grabbed her phone to text Maurice. The screen flickered once, twice, and died. No. She pressed the power button, pressed it again. She shook the phone as if it were a magic lamp that could grant at least one wish. The screen remained black. "The battery's dead, on the most important day of my life." Daniel reached back, offering his own phone charger. But Serena was already somewhere else. "Forget it, look at the time. I'm 40 minutes late." 40. No Maurice in the world waits 40 minutes. Not even if he were a saint. And he's no saint. He's a civil engineer. Daniel didn't answer. He gripped the steering wheel with both hands and did something a CEO who controls 17 subsidiaries on 4 continents would never do. He drove onto the curb. Serena was thrown to the side. "Wait, what are you?" The car navigated the wide sidewalk, skirted 2 cones, and slipped into a side street that wasn't on anyone's GPS. Daniel accelerated, turned twice without hesitation, and emerged on the other side of the blockade, as if he had hacked the entire city's traffic system. Silence claimed Serena for 3 seconds. 3 seconds, which, for anyone who knew Serena Davis, was an absolute record. "Seriously, why didn't you do that before?" Daniel almost smiled. Almost. The Italian restaurant appeared on the next corner. A brick facade, windows glowing with warm yellow light, the exact kind of place that seemed custom designed for candlelight first dates. Daniel pulled the car to the curb. Serena was already reaching for the door handle before the car had completely stopped. "Thank you. And for the love of all that's holy, learn your way around the city before you go driving people around." She shut the door and ran. Her heels clicked against the asphalt as if timing every wasted second. Serena pushed the restaurant door, bypassing the waiter without a glance, and headed straight to the reserved corner table. The table was empty. The candle was lit. The 2 glasses of water remained untouched. The menu lay closed on the companion's side. A napkin folded in the shape of a swan seemed like the loneliest thing in the world. Serena glanced around. Her attention settled on the waiter. Did the gentleman who was here step out to take a call? Did he go to the restroom? The waiter opened his mouth, closed it, and opened it again. The classic hesitation of someone who didn't want to deliver bad news. The reservation was for 2, but the gentleman who arrived first waited 40 minutes, asked for the water tab, and left. He left this. The waiter held out a napkin with something scribbled in pen. "Guess it wasn't meant to be. Good luck." Serena read it. She read it again. She folded the napkin carefully, as if it were something important, and tucked it into her purse alongside everything else that was accumulating there without any organization. Lipstick, keys, crumpled receipts, promises that hadn't worked out. She turned and left the restaurant without saying a word. On the other side of the street, Daniel was still parked at the curb. He watched her emerge. The transformation was obvious. The woman who had entered the restaurant had her shoulders back and hands ready to gesture. The woman who came out had her shoulders hunched and hands stuffed in her pockets. Serena walked past the car without a glance, without speaking, without realizing the driver was still there. She turned the corner and vanished. Daniel sat in silence. Cars honked behind him. He didn't budge. He glanced at the back seat. A faint perfume lingered in the air. And there, caught between the backrest and the seat, was an earring. Small, cheap. The kind you buy at a neighborhood shop for $2 a pair. Daniel picked it up carefully. He twirled it between his fingers for 3 seconds. Then he slipped it into the inner pocket of his suit jacket. The honking continued. He put the car in motion, but his gaze flicked back to the rearview mirror once more, searching for her silhouette on the corner. She was already gone. And he was left with the strange feeling that the rideshare driver he never was had just ruined the most important night of someone's life. The earring weighed in his pocket as if it were made of lead. Before Serena finds out if that missed date was bad luck or the beginning of something that would completely change her life. Tell me in the comments, which country and city are you watching this story from? And one thing's for sure. If it had been you in that traffic, would you have panicked? Or would you still be trying to save the date? Oh, and at the end of the story, don't forget to come back and give it a rating from 0 to 10. Serena woke up the next morning with her mind made up. The universe wasn't going to win. Not this time. She washed her face, faced the mirror, and pointed at her own reflection as if reprimanding a repeat offender employee. Yesterday didn't count. Yesterday was a rehearsal. Today's the real deal. Her phone, finally charged, had a message from Maurice that had arrived at 11:47 the previous night. "I waited a long time. It's fine. We'll reschedule." Serena read it 6 times. By the 3rd time, she was already smiling. By the 5th, she was already picking out an outfit. By the 6th, she was doing an audit. Hair, washed. Mint green dress, flawless. Chances of a cosmic disaster happening twice in a row, statistically impossible. I researched it. She hadn't researched it. The date was rescheduled for 4 in the afternoon in the Central Park. An open environment. No traffic, no stranger's car, no variables the universe could sabotage. Serena arrived at the park at 3:45, 15 minutes early, an achievement so rare in her life that it deserved a framed certificate. The park looked beautiful. Mild sun, children playing, birds singing in the tree branches as if rehearsing for a romantic movie soundtrack. Serena smiled at the birds. Mistake. She spotted Maurice sitting on the designated bench 30 meters away. A blue dress shirt, sunglasses. The kind of man who looked like he had been assembled by a dating app algorithm. 20 meters. Serena's heart raced. Her hands began to sweat. The mint green dress seemed like the right choice. She straightened her posture and rehearsed the smile she had practiced in the mirror for 4.5 minutes that morning. 15 meters. His face was fully visible now. The smile, the brown eyes, the styled hair of someone who had spent time getting ready. 10 meters. And then the universe did what the universe does best. A bird. And it wasn't some discreet sparrow. Not a polite little bird that did its business with dignity on a distant branch. It was a bird the size of a small drone with apparently severe intestinal issues, which flew over Serena with the precision of a military bomber and dropped onto the exact top of her head an amount of organic matter that defied the laws of physics and common sense. Serena stopped. The world stopped. Even the wind ceased, as if nature itself needed a moment to process what it had just done. Serena raised her hand slowly to the top of her head. She touched it. Examining her fingers, she glared at the sky. "Are you serious, universe? A bird? Seriously?" Maurice witnessed the entire event. His expression shifted from a smile to confusion, from confusion to recognition, and from recognition to absolute disgust. He slipped off his sunglasses as if to confirm reality. He confirmed it. He stood up from the bench, grabbed his phone, typed something with the speed of someone evacuating a burning building, and walked away in the opposite direction without a single backward glance. Serena's phone vibrated. Something came up. "I think we'd better leave this for another time." Serena read the message with bird poop trickling down her forehead. She walked to the bench where Maurice had been sitting 3 minutes earlier, sat down, letting her gaze drift in space for exactly 7 seconds. Then she turned to the bench. "Did you see that?" she asked the wood. "Did you see what just happened to me?" The bench didn't reply. "I got dressed up. I got here early. Early. I'm never early for anything, and the universe sends a bird with digestive problems to bomb me 10 meters from the man of my dreams." She pulled a tissue from her purse and began wiping her hair with movements that alternated between desperation and fury. "You know what the problem is? I'm a good person. I pay my bills. I say good morning to the doorman. I sort the recycling. And this is how the world repays me, with an aerial bombardment in the park?" An elderly lady passing by with a small dog watched Serena talking to the bench and quickened her pace. Serena didn't even notice. She was committed to her rant. "I give up. Do you hear me?" She told the sky. "I give up on love. Love gave up on me first, so we're even." Her stomach rumbled. Her gaze dropped. "Oh, great, now hunger." On the other side of the stone path, an ice cream cart chimed every time the owner pushed the wheels over the uneven ground. Mr. George, 60-some years old, with a white apron and a whistle that seemed to come from another century, was packing up the tubs to close shop. Serena stood up from the bench, still with remnants of disaster in her hair, and walked toward the cart like a castaway spotting a ship. "Mister, give me the biggest ice cream you have. Make it special, because today I need it." Mr. George took her in. He noted the hair, then the red eyes. And without a word, he opened all the remaining tubs and began assembling a frozen sculpture using every last scoop of each flavor. He whistled during the entire process. When he finished, he extended the triple cone with the gentleness of someone presenting a work of art. Serena held the ice cream with both hands, observing it as if it were the only good thing that had happened all week. She raised the cone toward her mouth and heard the crying. It wasn't an adult's cry. It was a child's cry. The high-pitched, rhythmic kind of crying that pierces eardrums and melts hearts with equal efficiency. Serena turned her head. 5 meters away, a little boy of about 6, neat, hair-combed, clean sneakers, stood beside an elegant woman wearing an expression of maternal exhaustion. The boy's attention was locked on Mr. George's cart with teary eyes and a trembling lower lip. "Mommy, the ice cream is all gone." The man said that was the last one. The woman, Helena, leaned down and adjusted the boy's hair with the patience of someone who had done it 40 times that same day. "Gail, sweetheart, we'll come back and buy ice cream tomorrow, okay?" "But Mom, today's our ice cream day." "I know, honey, but it's all gone." Serena's focus shifted from the boy to the ice cream in her hand. 3 generous scoops, intact, without a single lick. And she did what Serena Davis always did, when her heart commanded and her brain had no time to veto. She walked to the little boy, knelt to his eye level and offered the cone. "Here, it's yours." Gale stopped crying instantly. His eyes went wide. His mouth fell open. His 2 small hands clasped the cone as if it were a World Cup trophy. "Is it real?" he asked, gazing at his mother as if asking for permission to believe. "It's real?" Serena said. "All of it?" "All of it." Gale took the first lick with the concentration of a scientist analyzing a rare specimen, then the second. By the third, he was already smiling with ice cream on his nose. "Mommy," he said with his mouth full, "you should ask Uncle to hire a nice girl like her." Helena opened her mouth to apologize for her son. Gale wasn't finished. "Hey, do you want a job?" Serena let out a laugh. Her first real laugh of the day, perhaps of the week. "You're a really cool kid, but I already have a job." Helena flushed, but there was something in her eyes that wasn't just embarrassment. It was recognition. The kind of gaze that said, "I just witnessed who you really are." She opened her purse, pulled out a business card, and handed it to Serena. "You have a beautiful heart. If you ever need a real job, call me." Serena took the card. She read the name. Helena Calloway, Vice President, Nexus Holdings. She tucked it into her purse alongside the dirty tissue, 3 crumpled receipts, and the restaurant napkin that still read, "Good luck." She waved goodbye to Gale. Gale waved back with the hand that wasn't holding the ice cream, which by now was melting down his arm. Serena returned home with her hair still sticky, no ice cream, no date, and no logical reason to smile. But she smiled anyway. The smile lasted until she arrived at work the next day and found an envelope on her desk with a note. "Sign before 10. No exceptions. Roger." Inside the envelope lay a 17-page contract where Serena Davis's name appeared as the legal representative for all the company's financial transactions over the last 6 months. The smile vanished. The envelope sat on the desk like a paper ultimatum. Serena arrived at the office at 8:43, 17 minutes before the deadline Roger had imposed with that note that didn't ask. It commanded. She placed her purse on the chair, studied the envelope, and felt her stomach make the same noise the building elevator makes when it is about to break down. At 9:12, Roger's office door opened with the subtlety of thunder on a picnic day. "Serena, meeting room. Now." It wasn't an invitation. It was a sentence with legs and a tie. Serena grabbed the envelope, crossed the hallway, and entered the meeting room where Roger was already seated at the head of the table with that corporate smile that didn't come anywhere near his eyes. The kind of smile a crocodile would make if crocodiles wore suits and shaving cream. "Sit down," he said, pushing the contract toward her. "It's just a formality. Just sign it, Serena. Management needs it by noon." Serena reviewed the contract. 17 pages. Her name appeared in the header, in the footer, and in 6 clauses she couldn't read properly because the font was so small it seemed to have been written by ants with vision problems. "Roger, I'd like to read it before." "Read what?" He crossed his arms. "You're an administrative assistant, Serena. Your job is to sign, stamp, and organize. Reading is the legal department's job. Sign it now, or I'll have someone in your seat before lunch." Serena swallowed hard. She pulled the contract closer. She picked up the pen next to the document. She positioned the tip on the paper, and the pen didn't write. She scribbled once. Twice. She made that circular motion everyone makes in the corner of the sheet when they suspect the ink has run out. Nothing. The pen was as dry as Roger's sense of humor. "The pen doesn't work." Roger snorted, opened the side drawer, and tossed another pen onto the table with the gentleness of someone throwing a dart. Serena picked up the second pen, positioned it on the paper. Nothing. "This one doesn't either." Roger blinked. He pulled the entire drawer out and dumped 6 pens on the table as if distributing ammunition on a bureaucratic battlefield. Serena tested the third. Dry. The fourth. Dry. The fifth made a noise like someone trying to breathe underwater, giving up on the first letter. The sixth simply refused to come out of its cap, as if practicing civil disobedience. "Universe," Serena whispered, directing her gaze to the ceiling with wide eyes. "What did I do to you?" "A pen. I just needed one working pen." Roger slammed both hands on the table. "You have 30 seconds to get a pen in this office or I—" Serena leaped to her feet. She moved too fast. Her right elbow collided with the coffee cup sitting on the corner of the table. Black coffee, no sugar, hot enough to be classified as a thermal weapon. And the cup spun in the air with an almost cinematic elegance before pouring its entire contents directly onto the 17 pages of the contract. The coffee spread like a miniature river. The ink of the clauses blurred. Serena's name vanished beneath a brown stain that swallowed the header, the footer, and at least 4 of the 6 signatures she was supposed to fill in. The entire office remained quiet for 5 seconds. Roger studied the soaked contract. His attention shifted to Serena. His gaze settled on the 7 dead pens scattered across the table. His face went from red to purple with the speed of a broken traffic light, jumping straight to an emergency flash. "You're completely useless. Grab your things and get out of this building. Now." "You're fired." Serena didn't argue. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She stood still for 2 seconds, facing the defective pens as if she owed each one an apology for not being able to save them in time. Then she left the room, walked to her desk, and filled a cardboard box with everything that would fit. A photo frame with a picture of her friends, a plastic cactus she called Gerald, 3 packs of Post-it notes that were never used, and the scarf that had lived on the back of her chair since last winter. No one said goodbye. No one met her eyes as she walked down the hallway with the box in her lap. The people working there had already learned that when Roger fired someone, looking meant being next. Serena stepped out the front door, stopped on the sidewalk, and directed her gaze to the sky. "Are you satisfied?" she said to the empty blue above her head. "The date, the bird, now the job. What else do you want to take from me, universe? Do you want my cactus? Because Gerald is all I have left, and I swear if you touch him, we're going to have a serious problem." An elderly woman passing by with shopping bags took a wide step to avoid Serena, turning back twice before crossing the street. Serena didn't even notice. She clutched the box to her chest, adjusted Gerald between a Post-it pack and the photo frame, and began walking with no set destination. Inside her purse, Helena Calloway's crumpled card remained. Forgotten. Invisible. Waiting. The next day, Serena was sitting on the bed with a jar of peanut butter and a spoon when she turned on the television. Roger's face appeared on the screen. It wasn't a corporate photo. It was a mugshot against a white background with numbers on a plaque. Roger's styled hair was messy on one side, and his eyes had lost all that boardroom shark gleam. The anchor spoke with that grave tone journalists use when the news is big enough to interrupt regular programming. The FBI arrested businessman Roger Fonseca and 4 other directors of Fonseca Capital this morning, accused of corporate money laundering estimated at $14 million. According to investigations, employees were used as frontmen and had their names inserted into fraudulent contracts. Everyone who signed the internal documents will be indicted as co-responsible. The spoon of peanut butter stopped in midair. Serena's focus locked onto the television, then the spoon, then the television again. "Everyone who signed," she repeated aloud, savoring each syllable as if translating an ancient language. "Everyone who signed. The pens, the 7 pens that wouldn't write, the coffee that spun in the air and destroyed the entire contract." Serena set the peanut butter jar on the nightstand, got out of bed, and directed her gaze to the bedroom ceiling. "Wait a second. Wait. Did you do that on purpose? The pens? The coffee? Was all of that you?" The ceiling didn't reply. Ceilings generally don't reply, but Serena stood there, motionless, her mouth open and eyes tearing up, processing the idea that the worst day of her life had actually been the greatest deliverance of her existence. She sat back on the bed, hand to her face. She took 3 deep breaths and whispered to the empty apartment, her voice thick with emotion. "Okay, I'm sorry, universe. Sorry about the pens, and about Gerald. He's fine." On the same bed, under the pillow, her phone vibrated with a notification from a group of friends that read, "Girls, did you see Roger's face on TV? OMG lol." And in her purse hanging from the chair, Helena Calloway's card waited, even more crumpled than the day before, with bent corners and fading ink, but still legible. Serena was on her 3rd cup of coffee and her 2nd hour of self-pity when the phone rang. It wasn't a text, it was a call. The whole group. Camille, Bia, and Danny, all at once like a tribunal of friends in emergency session. Serena put them on speaker and propped the phone against the salt shaker because the phone stand had been lost in her purse 4 months ago, along with a pen that probably would have worked better than the 7 in Roger's office. The coffee shop was small, warm, smelling of roasted beans, and lit with that yellow glow that makes anyone look like the lead in an indie movie. Serena didn't look like the lead of anything. She looked like someone who had slept 3 hours and woke up with the zipper pattern of the pillowcase imprinted on her face. "Girls, did you see Roger on TV?" Serena said, spinning the spoon in her cup aimlessly. "I almost signed that contract. Almost. If it weren't for the pens." "Serena," Camille cut in with the voice she used when she had information too important to wait for politeness. "Forget Roger. I need to tell you something about Maurice." The name hit Serena in the center of her chest like an ice cube falling into hot coffee. "What about Maurice?" "I found out something," Camille said, her tone making it obvious she'd been holding on to the information since dawn. "Remember my friend Stacy? The one who works at the veterinary clinic on Oak Street? She was on the same app. Maurice set a date with her last Tuesday, at 6 in the evening, at the Italian place with candlelight. Serena blinked. "Last Tuesday at 6? But that was my slot. At my restaurant." Exactly. And it wasn't just Stacy. Bia's cousin got a message from him too, for the same day, at 8:30. A different restaurant, but the same script. I can't wait to meet you. Bia joined the conversation with an audio clip that made the salt shaker tremble, even on speakerphone. Serena. 3 women. The same day. At different times. The guy had an appointment booked for dates like he was a dentist. And the worst part, he sent the same message to everyone. Exactly the same. Copied and pasted. He didn't even bother to change "can't wait" to "excited" to hide it. The space between the tables fell silent for 4 seconds. The barista stopped steaming milk. An elderly lady at the front table lowered her newspaper, her attention focused on Serena's phone as if following the most crucial episode of a soap opera. Serena let go of the spoon. She leaned back in her chair. And she began to laugh. It wasn't a laugh of relief. It wasn't a nervous laugh. It was that laugh that starts deep in the stomach when the body finally understands something the brain refused to accept. The traffic, she said, still laughing. The driver who got lost. I missed the date, and the bird in the park. I missed the date again. Serena, what? I thought it was bad luck. She wiped her eyes with the sleeve of her blouse. I fought with the universe, yelled at the car clock, talked to a wooden bench, cursed at a bird, and the whole time, all of that was protecting me from a scammer with a dentist's schedule. Danny sent a sticker to the chat. No one checked it, but everyone knew she was participating in her own way. Now what? Camille asked. What are you going to do? Serena's focus shifted to her purse. She slid her hand inside. She bypassed the capless lipstick, the crumpled receipts, the restaurant napkin that still read "Good luck," and found at the very bottom, with bent corners and fading ink, the card. Helena Calloway, Vice President, Nexus Holdings. I think, Serena said, smoothing the card on the coffee shop table as if ironing a prom dress. I'm gonna make a call. She hung up on her friends, took a deep breath, and dialed the number. Helena answered on the second ring. She remembered Serena. She remembered the ice cream. She remembered how Gail spent the rest of the day talking about the nice lady from the park. And yes, there was an assistant position open at Nexus Holdings. Interview tomorrow at 9 in the morning. Serena confirmed. She expressed her thanks. She hung up, and she gazed at her phone with the expression of someone who couldn't believe something had actually worked out for the first time this week. She stood up from her chair, grabbed her espresso cup, still hot, still full, and slipped the card into her coat pocket with the care of someone storing a winning lottery ticket inside a torn jacket. And then she turned around, too fast. Her elbow collided first, then the cup, then the coffee. The liquid flew in a perfect arc and landed with surgical precision on the chest of a tall man in a charcoal gray suit who was standing right behind her. The coffee spread across his shirt like an improvised Rorschach test. The man glanced down, then met her gaze, and Serena recognized his face. The floor of the coffee shop could have opened up at that moment, and she would have been grateful. It was the driver, the one from the blocked traffic, the one from Central Avenue, the one who drove on the curb, the one whose eyes stayed on the rearview mirror for too long. You again? Serena took a step back, hitting the chair with the back of her knee. Isn't it enough that you ruined my dream date? Now you came to stalk me and ruin my clothes? Daniel examined the stain on his chest. Then he shifted his attention to Serena. Then back to the stain. His mouth twitched in a slight sideways movement that wasn't quite a smile, but wasn't anything a normal person would do when faced with a $300 shirt covered in coffee. Your clothes? He said, pointing to his own shirt. Serena assessed the damage, processed it, and instead of apologizing as any rational person would, grabbed a handful of napkins from the nearest dispenser and began scrubbing Daniel's chest with the intensity of someone trying to remove a stain of criminal evidence before forensics arrived. Stand still. Stand still. I'm handling it. Daniel stood still. Not because Serena ordered him to, but because there was no corporate protocol in the world that taught a billionaire CEO how to react when a stranger who had invaded his car 2 days ago was now rubbing napkins on his chest in a crowded coffee shop. The stain, naturally, spread. The napkins disintegrated. Paper fibers stuck to the wet fabric like tiny soldiers refusing to abandon their post. I don't believe this, Serena murmured, gazing at the disaster her own hands had amplified. I have to go. She dropped the shredded napkins on the table, grabbed her purse in a movement that almost knocked over the salt shaker, and dashed through the coffee shop door, walking so fast her heels seemed to be competing with her heartbeat. Daniel stood there, the shirt ruined, the napkin remnants stuck to his suit. A barista behind the counter holding back laughter with both hands. He pulled his phone from his pocket and called Helena. "Helena, how's the assistant hiring process? Anyone new come in today?" Helena replied with the excitement of someone who had found treasure. "Yes, indeed. Remember the girl from the park? The one with the ice cream? Gail hasn't stopped talking about her. I scheduled the interview for tomorrow at 9. Daniel pulled the tablet from the inner pocket of his suit jacket, the same pocket that had been holding a cheap earring for 3 days, and opened Nexus's candidate files. Serena's face appeared on the screen. The same woman who had just covered him in coffee. The same one who had entered his car thinking it was a rideshare app. The same one who, in exactly 16 hours, was going to enter his company headquarters for a job interview. Daniel put away the tablet. He noted the stain on his chest. And this time, the sideways smile was not contained. It was complete. The alarm didn't ring. Serena opened her eyes, checking the phone on her nightstand, and saw the numbers 847 shining on the screen. With the indifference of something that didn't care, someone's life was falling apart in real time. The interview was at 9. No. She leaped out of bed with the grace of a giraffe in an earthquake. She brushed her teeth while looking for her blouse. She put on her skirt while stepping into her shoes. And she did the audit in record speed, in the foggy reflection of the microwave, because there was no time to reach the bathroom mirror. Hair, questionable. Outfit, the best one left. Delay, critical. Dignity, under negotiation. She left the apartment, ran down the stairs because the elevator took longer than justice, and reached the wet sidewalk. It was raining, not the dramatic movie kind of rain. It was that thin, annoying drizzle that didn't justify an umbrella, but guaranteed you arrived soaked anywhere in the world. Serena raised her hand for a taxi. It passed right by. Full. She raised it for another. Full. A third. The driver caught her eye, made a face that said "good luck" without moving his lips, and accelerated. Serena glared at the sky. The rain fell on her face as if the universe were spitting. "Universe, I'm going to believe you're on my side this time. Don't let me down." She ran down the sidewalk. Her heels beat against the puddles like drumsticks on a wet drum. Her phone clock showed 8:53, and the numbers changed with the cruelty of someone who knew exactly what they were doing. Then Serena spotted the traffic light. And at the traffic light, stopped at the red signal. With the discreet gleam of rain trickling down its dark hood, was the car. The same black car. The same shiny car. The same car she had invaded 5 days earlier, thinking it was a rideshare app. Serena didn't think. Thinking was a luxury for people who weren't 7 minutes away from losing their second big opportunity of the week. She crossed the crosswalk, opened the passenger door, not the back door this time, the front door, because Serena Davis is the kind of person who evolves in her crimes, and slid inside. Daniel Calloway, CEO of Nexus Holdings, in an impeccable dark blue suit, coffee in hand, and wearing the expression of someone who thought they had already seen everything in life, turned his head slowly. "I'm so glad the universe put you here." Serena closed the door with the confidence of someone who lived there. "Look, sorry about the coffee yesterday. I was stressed. But today's the day, the interview day, the day that's going to change my life. And I need you to drive fast, but without going onto the curb this time because I'm wearing my good skirt and I don't want to arrive all wrinkled." Daniel opened his mouth. Serena didn't let him. "And since I know you get lost and don't know the streets." She pulled her own phone from her purse, detached the GPS mount from Daniel's dashboard, the mount that cost more than her entire phone, and snapped her device into place with the naturalness of someone redecorating her own living room. "I already put the address here for you, okay? Fastest route. No closed avenues, no construction, no adventures." The address glowed on Serena's phone screen. Nexus Holdings, headquarters. 47th Avenue. Daniel checked the address, glanced at the crumpled card Serena held in her other hand. Helena Calloway, vice president, and consulted the rearview mirror for 2 seconds, as if checking his own conscience before making a choice. The traffic light turned green. The car behind them honked. Daniel accelerated. Serena adjusted her posture in the leather seat, smoothed her skirt with both hands, and tucked Helena's card into her coat pocket with the reverence of someone storing a relic. "You know," she said, gazing out the window as the rain drew lines across the glass, "I owe you an apology." Daniel took his eyes off the road for half a second. For yesterday's coffee? No. I mean, yes, for the coffee too. But I owe you an apology for the restaurant day. I yelled at you. I said you'd ruined my date. I said you were the worst driver in the city. I remember. Right? I found out the guy from the date, Maurice, was a scammer. He scheduled dates with 3 women on the same day. Same message. Same conversation. Same lie. He used the app like it was a parts catalog, and I was number 2 for Tuesday. Serena turned to Daniel, her eyes slightly watery, but with a smile that didn't match the dampness. So when you got lost in traffic and I missed the date, and when the bird bombed me in the park and I missed the date again? None of that was bad luck. None. The universe was protecting me, and I was just standing there, yelling at the clock and talking to a wooden bench. The canyon of buildings on 47th Avenue began to appear through the windshield. The rain slowed. The sun made a timid appearance between 2 clouds, as if waiting for the right moment to illuminate the scene. Daniel said nothing. But his grip loosened on the steering wheel in a way it hadn't since he was 12 years old, and his mother told him she was proud. The car pulled up in front of the Nexus Holdings building. Serena gazed up through the windshield. 42 floors of glass and steel that reflected the clouds as if the entire building were made of sky. The Nexus logo glowed at the top with letters that cost more than her annual apartment rent. "It's here," she whispered. She gathered her purse, checked her hair in the visor mirror, a habit of someone who had learned not to trust the microwave reflection, and opened the door. Before stepping out, she turned to Daniel. "Honestly, in the end, it was a good thing you made me miss that date. I found out the guy was a scammer taking advantage of women. This world is so crazy." She tapped the dashboard twice as if thanking a horse after a race. "Thanks for the ride. Again. And charge it on the app, okay? I don't know how this tipping thing works." Serena stepped out. She shut the door, and she ran toward the building entrance, her heels echoing on the damp marble of the sidewalk. Daniel sat in the car. Her phone was still snapped into the dashboard mount. The GPS displayed, "You have arrived at your destination," in green letters that flashed across the cracked screen. He removed the phone from the mount. He held it for a moment. He watched the building entrance where her silhouette had vanished through the revolving door, and he smiled. Not sideways, not contained, not hidden, wide. The kind of smile a man who controls 17 subsidiaries and 4 continents doesn't give to reports, contracts, or shareholder boards. The kind he had only given to the rearview mirror when she was in the back seat 5 days earlier, talking endlessly about a scammer she called Destiny. Daniel turned off the car. He slipped Serena's phone into his suit pocket, right next to the cheap earring that had remained there since the first day. And he stepped out of the car on the side of the building, where the CEO's exclusive parking spot was hidden behind a door with no sign. Because in exactly 3 minutes, Serena was going to enter the lobby of his company. And he needed to arrive first. Serena pushed through the revolving door of Nexus Holdings with the momentum of someone who had just stepped off a roller coaster and needed to stand on firm ground before her stomach changed its mind. The lobby was the size of a small airport. Polished marble floors, a high ceiling with glass panels, and ornamental plants that probably cost more than 6 months of her rent. In the center, a Nexus Holdings logo gleamed in brushed steel as if saying, "You don't belong here, but welcome anyway." She smoothed her blouse, adjusted her purse, and walked to the reception desk with the posture of someone pretending her heart wasn't beating in her throat. "Good morning. Serena Davis. I have an interview scheduled with Helena Calloway at 9:30. Clara," the blonde receptionist on the left, flashed a professional smile and began typing. Denise, the brunette on the right, pushed a clipboard with a registration form and a black pen toward her. Serena studied the pen for 2 seconds longer than normal. "This one works, right?" Clara and Denise exchanged a glance. "Yes, it works, ma'am. Just checking. I have a complicated history with pens." Serena began filling out the form with the careful handwriting of someone writing her own will. Full name, date of birth, previous experience. She paused at the last employer section and took a deep breath. "Universe, if you have any drop of consideration, let this interview go all the way without any disaster. I'm not asking for much. Just normalcy. Basic normalcy." She murmured low enough that she thought no one could hear. Or so she believed, because Denise tilted her head and Clara bit her lip. It was at that moment the revolving doors moved again. Daniel Calloway entered the lobby of Nexus Holdings the same way he did every morning. Dark suit jacket, a bulky executive portfolio under his right arm, long strides, and the kind of calm that only belongs to someone who doesn't need to run to get anywhere because everywhere waits for him. The difference was that on this morning, someone was watching. Serena raised her eyes from the registration form. She spotted the man in the suit with the large portfolio. She recognized the same posture, the same face, the same profile of the driver who had just dropped her off at the door. And her brain, which had already been in survival mode since 7 in the morning, processed the information the only possible way. "Oh my God, it's you!" Daniel stopped. The entire lobby stopped. Serena dropped the pen on the counter, bypassed the reception desk with the ease of someone who owned the place, and walked straight to Daniel, her eyes wide with genuine concern. "Do you do deliveries around here too? Wow, what a heavy rush. Driver by day and courier by morning. Seriously, when do you even sleep?" Clara gripped the edge of the counter with both hands. Denise brought her hand to her mouth and froze an expression that was somewhere between absolute shock and a suppressed laughing fit. Daniel checked the two receptionists. He did what he always did. He brought his index finger to his lips, slowly, unhurriedly. "Shh." Clara swallowed hard. Denise transformed her laugh into a cough and pretended to search for something on her computer with a dedication she had never shown in 3 years at the company. Daniel turned to Serena with that half smile he tried to hide and could never completely conceal. "Yeah, a courier's life around here is full of surprises. I bet. Look, I know we met under strange circumstances, and I know I yelled at you because of the traffic and spilled coffee on your shirt and invaded your car twice. But I want you to know I'm rooting for you. Hardworking people like us need to support each other." She patted him twice on the shoulder consolingly, on the shoulder of the billionaire CEO, in front of the receptionists whose Christmas bonuses were authorized by the signature of the man receiving consoling pats. Clara turned her face to the monitor and pressed her lips together so hard they turned white. Denise opened a drawer, stuck her head inside, and pretended to look for a stapler for the rest of the interaction. "And that folder is heavy, huh?" Serena said, pointing to the executive portfolio under his arm. "What's in there? Documents? Contracts? Seriously, watch your back." "I read an article that said carrying weight on only one side misaligns your entire lower back." "I'll keep that in mind," Daniel said. "Good. I'm glad." A security guard passing through the lobby recognized Daniel and was about to open his mouth. Daniel moved his head 2 millimeters to the left. The guard closed his mouth, did a U-turn, and went to check an ornamental plant that required no checking at all. Serena returned to the counter to finish the form. Daniel took advantage of the gap and walked toward the back of the lobby, where a discreet door with a steel frame gave access to the president's private executive elevator. He pressed the button. The steel doors opened with that soft hiss expensive elevators make when they know the person entering signed the maintenance check. Daniel took a step forward, and a hand grabbed his arm. Serena stood there, eyes wide, breathing fast, the face of someone who had just witnessed a child run toward a busy street. "Hey, wait, no." Daniel turned slowly. "Did you read the sign?" He checked the sign on the wall beside the elevator. Gold letters on a black background. Restricted access, executive office. "That one over there is the executive elevator," Serena said, almost pleading. "If they catch you in there, you'll lose your job instantly." Instantly. Do you think the CEO of a company this size is going to accept a courier using his private elevator? Daniel met her eyes. The corner of his mouth twitched once. Twice. "You're right," he said. "I hadn't thought of that." "Of course you didn't. That's why I'm here." She grabbed his wrist with both hands and pulled with a determination that would make any firefighter in a rescue operation envious. Daniel let himself be dragged, because for the first time in years, someone was trying to protect him from himself, and he didn't want it to stop. Serena dragged Daniel down the marble hallway with the urgency of someone trying to prevent a disaster, and the gentleness of someone who thinks she's saving a puppy from a busy avenue. Come with me. Quick, before anyone sees." Daniel went. Not because he didn't know the way, but because her hand around his wrist was warm and firm and absolutely convinced she was doing the right thing. She guided him through the lobby to the common elevator's hallway, where 3 stainless steel doors stood side by side with round buttons anyone could press without needing a level 5 security badge. Serena pressed the button and turned to him, her breathing still heavy. This one. This is the elevator for normal people. No gold plaque, no restricted access, no risk of anyone losing their job over a poorly planned delivery. The elevator opened, empty. Serena entered first. Daniel entered next. The doors closed with the quiet hiss of something that didn't want to disrupt what was about to happen. The silence was immediate. The kind of silence that only exists inside elevators when two people are left alone and neither knows exactly what to do with it. Serena stood on the left, Daniel on the right. 2 steps of distance that felt like 2 centimeters. The mirror at the back of the elevator reflected them side by side, and Serena pretended she wasn't studying his reflection. She was. The elevator began to rise. 2nd floor, 3rd. Serena took a deep breath and crossed her arms as if preparing for a lecture. Look, I don't want to meddle in your life, but I've worked in a big company before and I know how it works. There are rules, and the first rule is, everyone in their own elevator. The executive one belongs to executives. Ours is ours. You mix them up, you get complications. Daniel nodded slowly. 2nd rule, she continued, raising her index finger. Never make eye contact with the boss if he doesn't speak to you first. Seriously. They interpret eye contact as a threat. It's like wild animals. You work with your head down, deliver what you have to deliver, and leave without making noise. Eye contact as a threat. Daniel repeated. Exactly. And 3rd rule, and this the most important, never under any circumstances sit in anyone's chair from the upper floor. Not to rest, not to tie your shoe. Those chairs are sacred. People protect their chairs like they're medieval thrones. A coworker of mine once sat in the director's chair to wait for him to arrive and was transferred to the warehouse the same day. To the warehouse. And he liked his desk. He had a family photo, a cactus, a mug that said, "World's Best Dad." Everything went right to the warehouse with him. Daniel pressed his lips together. His jaw clenched in a way that looked like pain but wasn't. It was the Herculean effort not to laugh. 5th floor. 6th. And another thing, Serena said, her voice softer now, almost protective. I don't know how much you make delivering and how much you make driving, but I know it's hard to keep 2 jobs. So it's not worth risking either of them for an elevator with a pretty plaque. Do you hear me? I'm listening. Good. Because I don't want to see you fired over something stupid. The elevator stopped at the 8th floor. The doors opened. No one entered. The doors closed again, and in the returning silence, something shifted. Serena turned to adjust her purse on her shoulder, and raising her face, found Daniel gazing at her. Not a brief, fleeting glance that darted away when caught. Not the polite eye contact of someone listening out of obligation. His focus was steady, complete. The kind of gaze that said, I'm really seeing you, and I don't want to stop. Serena held his gaze. 1 second. 2. 3. The elevator hummed softly as if commenting. She looked away first. She tucked her hair behind her ear with an unnecessary gesture since her hair was already tucked. She swallowed hard and studied the floor indicator panel as if the sequence of numbers were the most fascinating thing in the world. Anyway, she said, her voice a half octave higher than it should be. That's it. Basic corporate survival. Right elevator. Head down. No taking other people's chairs. Understood, Daniel said. And there was something in his voice that hadn't been there before. Something that sounded like gratitude mixed with something else that neither was going to name in that elevator. 12th floor. The panel chimed. The doors opened to a wide hallway with gray carpet and glass walls looking out over the entire city. Discrete signs indicated the departments. At the end of the hallway to the left stood a door with the name Helena Calloway, Vice President. Serena checked the plaque, then turned her attention to Daniel. She pointed in the opposite direction. Go deliver your package to the assistant's desk. And remember, don't make eye contact with anyone, don't sit on anything, and leave through the right elevator. Good luck out there. Good luck to you too, Daniel said. Serena gave a single nod, turned left, and walked toward Helena's door with straight shoulders and the controlled breathing of someone about to enter the most important interview of her life. She knocked on the door. A female voice said, "Come in." Serena turned the handle, pushed the door, and entered. Helena was standing beside her desk, smiling with the expression of someone who already knew she was coming. And there, sitting in a leather swivel chair, much too big for him, with a clipboard resting on his knees and a purple pen in his hand, was Gale. The boy from the park. His attention locked on Serena with wide eyes of recognition and a smile that took up half his face. "Mommy, it's the ice cream lady," Serena blinked. "The interview," Gale said, straightening his posture and clearing his throat with the seriousness of a 6-year-old Supreme Court justice, "starts now." Helena hugged Serena as if she had known her for years. Not the one-armed corporate hug executives give when they want to seem welcoming without compromising their suit jacket. It was a real hug. 2 arms, 3 seconds. The kind of hug that said, "I've been waiting for you." "I'm so glad you came," Helena said, holding her shoulders with both hands. "I knew you'd call." Serena opened her mouth to answer with something professional and articulate. "I almost didn't call because I thought the card was gone, washed with a dirty tissue in the laundry machine, but it survived in my coat pocket, half blurred, half crumpled. And I figured if a business card survives a spin cycle, it's because the universe is sending a signal." Helena let out a short laugh and pointed to the chair in front of the desk. "Sit down, we'll talk. But first, someone here has some questions." Gale adjusted himself in the swivel chair. He placed the clipboard on his knees with the solemnity of someone about to conduct a congressional hearing. The purple pen was positioned in his right hand like a royal scepter. "Ice cream lady," he began, his voice carrying that forced gravity children use when imitating important adults. "First question." Serena looked at Helena. Helena made a gesture with her hand that said, "Let him. You can ask." "Do you eat ice cream every day?" "When the budget allows, yes." Gale scribbled something on the clipboard. From the angle, it looked like a drawing of a son wearing sunglasses, but he treated the notation as if it were a quarterly report. "Second question. Do you know how to play with Legos?" "Yes. I'm actually an expert in structures that fall down after 3 minutes, what engineering calls a test prototype." Gale's eyes went wide as if that were the most brilliant answer he had ever heard in his entire 6-year career of life. Another notation. This time it looked like a dinosaur. "Third question. Are you afraid of cockroaches?" "Not afraid. Respectful. Cockroaches were on the planet before dinosaurs. Any creature that survives an asteroid deserves at least some consideration." Helena covered her mouth with her hand. Her shoulders shook. Gale nodded with a seriousness that could be used in international tribunals. "Fourth question. And this the most important one." He maintained a kind of dramatic silence that would have lasted longer if he had more patience, but since he was 6 years old, it lasted exactly 1.5 seconds. "Are you married?" Serena blinked. "No." "Huh?" Gale said and scribbled something with so much vigor that the purple pen almost ripped through the page. Helena intervened with the diplomacy of someone who had been in this situation before. "Gale, sweetheart, I think the ladies answered very well. How about you let Mommy ask the professional questions now, okay? But I have another one later." Later. Helena turned to Serena and spent the next 15 minutes doing what she did best. Understanding people. She asked about experience, about challenges, about what Serena would do if she had to organize a schedule that changed 6 times a day. Serena answered each question with the honesty of someone who had no energy left to pretend, and the competence of someone who, despite all the chaos, knew how to work. Helena leaned back in her chair with the half-smile of someone who had already made the decision before the interview even started. "Serena, I'll be direct. The position is for executive assistant to the president. Mrs. Marcia, who's held the post for 30 years, is retiring. I need someone who's organized, resilient, and above all, treats people like people. Based on what I observed in the park, you have all of that in abundance." Serena swallowed hard. Her eyes shone the way eyes do when someone hears something they had needed to hear for a very long time. I'd be honored." The office door opened. Daniel Calloway entered with the executive portfolio under his arm and the calm of someone entering his own living room. He greeted Helena with a nod, blinked at Gale with the complicity of someone who had a plan, and walked toward the back of the room, where a chair stood. Not just any chair. The high-backed black leather chair that sat behind the main desk. The chair that had just been described by Serena in the elevator as the most sacred and forbidden object in the corporate universe. Daniel pulled the chair back. Serena stood up from her chair as if she had received an electric shock. "No." Daniel stopped with his hand on the armrest. "Hey, you can't sit there. I just explained it to you in the elevator. That's the CEO's chair. If someone comes in here and sees you sitting there, you'll be fired, transferred, and probably banned from this building for the rest of your life." "Did you hear anything I said?" She took 2 steps toward him with her arms open, as if trying to physically block access to the chair. A 5'4" bodyguard against a 6'2" billionaire. Daniel observed her for a second. 2, and sat in the chair. Slowly. Relaxed. He crossed his legs, rested his elbows on the leather armrests, and smiled. Not the suppressed half-smile he used in the lobby or the car. It was a full smile, from corner to corner. The smile of someone who had held back laughter from the beginning and finally couldn't anymore. Serena stood paralyzed in the middle of the room, her arms still open. Helena stood up from her desk. Her eyes shone with the brightness of someone who had waited for that moment since she first heard the story of the car at the traffic light. "Serena," she said, her voice soft and a smile spreading from ear to ear. "I see you've already met my brother, Daniel Calloway, the owner of Nexus Holdings." The air left Serena's lungs as if someone had pulled the plug on a balloon. She looked at Helena. She observed Daniel in the chair. She looked at Helena again. "Your brother." "My brother?" "Yes, the owner." The silence lasted 4 seconds. 4 seconds in which Serena's brain tried to reprocess every interaction of the last 2 days. The car, the traffic, the coffee, the GPS, the lobby, the pats on the shoulder, the elevator, the rules of corporate survival, the sacred chair. The sacred chair where the owner of the sacred chair sat with his legs crossed, gazing at her with the most amused expression a human face is capable of producing. Gail, who had witnessed everything from the swivel chair with the clipboard on his lap, took advantage of the gap as only a 6-year-old child knows how. "And he's single too, lady." Helena brought her hand to her forehead. Daniel closed his eyes and let out a laugh that echoed through the entire room. Gail smiled with the satisfaction of someone who had just delivered the final answer of the interview. Serena lowered her arms slowly. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. "Universe, if this is another one of your pranks, I swear." She didn't finish the sentence. She studied Daniel, who was still in the chair, who was still laughing, who was still the same man who had sat stuck in traffic with her without complaining, who accepted coffee on his shirt without charging for dry cleaning, who let her install the GPS in his car and teach him the rules of his elevator inside his building. She said, her voice carrying that tone of someone processing information in real time, her mouth arriving before the processing finished. "Is the rideshare driver side hustle some kind of therapy? Because personally, I find traffic super stressful." Daniel laughed again. Quieter this time. Closer to something that wasn't just amusement. And Serena, for the first time since she got into that car by mistake at some random traffic light, didn't know if she wanted to run or stay. The problem was that her legs had already decided. They stayed. Serena didn't wait for the elevator. She took the imaginary box of dignity she had left, tucked it under her arm, and descended the 16 floors via the emergency stairs with the speed of someone who had just discovered she had given consoling pats on a billionaire's shoulder. 16 floors. In heels. Her shoes hit the concrete steps with a cadence that said at every step, "You're a fool, you're a fool, you're a fool." On the 9th floor, she stopped and faced the stairwell ceiling. "Universe, I asked for a job. I didn't ask to become an office joke." The ceiling didn't reply. But the echo of her voice went up the walls as if it wanted to go back to the executive office and tell everyone. She kept going down. In the lobby, Clara and Denise raised their eyes from the reception desk at the same time, like 2 synchronized periscopes. Serena crossed the marble floor with her chin up, her eyes shining with that look of someone making a superhuman effort not to let any tears fall in front of witnesses. "Thanks for the opportunity," she told the receptionists without slowing her pace. "It was an unforgettable experience, especially the part where I tried to save the owner of the company from being fired by his own elevator." Clara opened her mouth. Denise closed hers. Neither of them managed to formulate a response before the revolving door in the lobby began to spin in the opposite direction. Daniel Calloway emerged from the executive elevator as if the emergency button had been pressed inside his chest. The charcoal gray suit was slightly rumpled. His hair, which never fell out of place in board meetings, had a stray strand on his forehead. He bypassed the receptionists without a glance and pushed the revolving door with the palm of his hand. On the other side of the lobby, leaning against the security counter, Mrs. Marcia held a coffee mug with the calm of someone watching the sunset from a balcony. 62 years old, 30 of them at that company. She had witnessed Daniel as an intern. Witness Daniel become director. Witness Daniel sit in the presidential chair for the first time, ask for coffee with shaking hands. She brought the mug to her lips, took a slow sip, and turned to the coworker beside her. In 30 years, I've never seen Daniel run after anyone. The coworker's eyes went wide. Mrs. Marcia took another sip. Write down the date. Outside, Serena was already on the sidewalk, walking in a straight line with the determination of someone who didn't know exactly where she was going, but knew she needed to be far from that building before tears lost the battle against gravity. Serena! She didn't stop. Serena, wait! The sound of Daniel's leather shoes hitting the marble sidewalk was completely different from the sound a billionaire CEO should make in public. Billionaire CEOs don't run. They send assistants. They call. They send emails with the phrase, "Would like to schedule a conversation," and wait patiently. Daniel wasn't waiting. He caught up to Serena at the corner of the building, a little out of breath, and stood in front of her, blocking the path like a traffic light in a suit. Serena stopped, not because she wanted to, but because the option was to run him over or walk around the flower bed, and she had already lost enough dignity for one day. "Out of my way," she said without meeting his eyes. "Not until you hear me out. I heard plenty, heard that you're the owner of all this, that your sister, your nephew, your receptionists, and probably even the bird in the park knew about it before me." The bird didn't know. Serena crossed her arms. "Is this serious to you?" Daniel took a deep breath. His hands went into his suit pockets, and his fingertips touched the cheap earring that had been there since the first day. "Serena, I never wanted to mock you. Not once. The traffic, the coffee, the elevator, they were the only moments in months anyone treated me like a person, not as the CEO, not as the name on Forbes, as a driver who doesn't know his way around the city." Serena's chin trembled a fraction of a millimeter. "Then why didn't you tell the truth?" "Because the truth was going to ruin everything. And I didn't want it to." The space between the two of them fell silent for 5 seconds. A taxi passed. A pigeon landed on the building ledge, observing below as if watching the most interesting episode of afternoon programming. Daniel continued. "Mrs. Marcia, my assistant, is retiring after 30 years. The position is real. The interview was real. And Helena chose you before I even knew you existed in the candidate pool." Serena uncrossed her arms. Slowly. "I don't accept charity. It's not charity. It's a job offer with market salary, full benefits, and a contract you can review with any lawyer you want. If in 30 days you feel I've treated you differently from any other employee, you leave. No penalty." Serena evaluated him for the first time since she left the room. She inspected his face, searching for any deceit in the corners of his eyes and finding none. "Strictly professional relationship," she said. "Strictly professional. I'll call you Mr. Calloway." "You can, and if I catch you laughing at me even once, I quit the same day and take Gail's clipboard as emotional compensation." Daniel's mouth twitched, just the corners. He controlled himself with the strength of someone holding back a sneeze inside a courtroom. "There." Serena held out her hand. Daniel shook it. Her hand was warm, his was cold, and the handshake lasted exactly 2 seconds longer than a professional handshake should, but neither of them commented. Helena watched from the 16th floor window, Gail in her arms. "Mommy, is Uncle fighting with the ice cream lady?" "No, sweetheart. Uncle's trying not to ruin the only good thing that's happened to him in the last 2 years. "Oh, will he make it?" Helena narrowed her eyes. "Let's hope so." On her first day of real work, Serena arrived 40 minutes early. Mrs. Marcia received her with coffee already made, a folder of executive office procedures, and a knowing gaze that said, "I know everything, but I'm going to pretend I know nothing because that's more fun." "Child, the main rule's simple," Mrs. Marcia said. "Daniel's schedule's sacred. No meeting gets in without passing through you. No person gets in without an appointment, and no decision about his day happens without your approval." Serena picked up the scheduling tablet. She opened the calendar for the week. She scanned the commitments like a professional who had done this her entire life, meeting with the board. Normal. Lunch with investors, expected. Friday night corporate dinner with the confirmed presence of Jennifer Ashford, ex-fiancée. Serena read it again. Jennifer Ashford, ex-fiancée. And on the companion line, handwritten in the notes section, in the hurried calligraphy of someone who didn't want anyone else to read, Serena, emergency companion, confirm presence. Serena raised her eyes from the tablet. Mrs. Marcia was already at the door, her back turned, mug in hand, with the unshakable calm of someone who was going to retire in 3 weeks and had no obligation to explain anything to anyone. Mrs. Marcia. Yes, child? Who's Jennifer Ashford? Mrs. Marcia took a sip of her coffee, slowly, as if the answer were hidden at the bottom of the mug. Take good care of him, child. That woman doesn't bite, she calculates. And she left. Serena stood there with the tablet in hand, her mouth half open and her stomach tying the kind of knot you can't undo with a napkin. For the first time since entering that building, Serena murmured his name without meaning to. Daniel, what did I get myself into? The tablet glowed in her hand. Jennifer Ashford's name flashed on the calendar like a silent alarm. No one had warned her existed. Serena had 4 days as executive assistant to the president of Nexus Holdings. 4 days in which she discovered where the coffee machine was, how to schedule a meeting room without causing a diplomatic incident, and that Mrs. Marcia kept cookies in the second drawer for emotional emergencies. On the 5th day, she did the audit in front of the Nexus bathroom mirror at 6:15 in the evening. Heels, killer. Dress, out of this world. Balance, precarious. Chances of falling in the ballroom, statistically high. The royal blue dress had arrived in a black box with a satin bow at 3 in the afternoon, with no card, no invoice, no instruction other than a handwritten note that read, for the emergency companion, the dress code is black tie, DC. Serena studied the note for 11 seconds. Then she inspected the dress. Then she returned her attention to the note. Strictly professional relationship, she repeated to the mirror. Strictly professional. Professional people wear dresses that cost more than 3 months' rent of my apartment. That's normal. Completely normal. The mirror didn't seem convinced. When Serena appeared in the Nexus lobby at 7 sharp, Daniel was leaning against the security desk in a custom-made black suit that looked as if it had been tailored onto him that morning. He turned and stopped moving. It wasn't an obvious reaction. No open mouth or wide eyes from a movie. It was something more subtle. His hands, which had been adjusting his tie, simply stopped in mid-gesture. His fingers remained suspended at the knot as if his brain had ordered his body to shut down for 2 seconds to process the image. Serena smoothed her dress with her palms, nervous. Is it good? Because if it isn't, the only alternative is the mint green dress with the bird poop stain from my rescheduled date with the man I thought was the guy of my dreams. Daniel finished the knot. Slowly, it's good. The way he said, it's good, didn't match the 2 words at all. It was the kind of it's good that meant the man had forgotten where the car door was and needed 3 attempts to find the handle. The ballroom of the Grand Meridian Hotel occupied the top floor of the most beautiful building downtown. Crystal chandeliers, round tables with white tablecloths, waiters moving as if trained by a choreographer. The kind of place where every glass of champagne cost the equivalent of Serena's apartment electricity bill. Serena held Daniel's arm at the entrance, not because she wanted to, but because the 12-centimeter heels had formed a secret alliance with the polished marble floor and had been trying to bring her down since her very first step. Daniel held her by the waist. Professional, she murmured. Extremely professional, he replied. The first 40 minutes were almost pleasant. Almost. Serena was introduced to directors, investors, and 2 senators who shook hands as if testing the durability of others' fingers. She smiled, greeted people, and engaged in the light conversation typical of gala attendees, except her version included questions like, does this shrimp cost extra or can we get seconds? Which, surprisingly, drew genuine laughs from half the table. Daniel observed from a distance, wearing a sideways smile. The way he always smiled when the algorithm failed and something real broke through. And then Jennifer Ashford entered the ballroom. She didn't enter the way a normal person enters a room. She materialized. Form-fitting black dress, diamond necklace, flawless hair. The smile of someone who treats every environment as a chessboard where she had already decided who was going to be the pawn. Jennifer spotted Daniel in 3 seconds, spotted Serena in 2 more, and the expression on her face shifted with the subtlety of a blade turning in slow motion. Daniel, she said, arriving at the table with a glass of champagne in hand. What a pleasant surprise, Jennifer. And who is your companion? The way she said companion had the same tone as someone saying your tablecloth. Serena Davis, Serena said, extending her hand. Executive assistant. Jennifer inspected the extended hand. She took 2 seconds longer than polite to shake it, and when she did, her fingers were as cold as porcelain left in the freezer. How charming. Daniel hiring assistants who look like runway models. Times have changed. I look more like a runway survivor, Serena said, especially in these heels. A man at the next table let out a laugh. Jennifer didn't. The dinner continued, but the temperature at the table dropped 10 degrees every time Jennifer addressed a question to Serena. Questions that sounded like casual conversation, but had the structure of an interrogation disguised as friendliness. And where did you work before, dear? At an investment firm. Oh, investments? How interesting. And which company? Serena's stomach tightened. A smaller firm. I don't think you'd know it. I know them all, dear. It's my job. Daniel leaned forward in his chair. Jennifer, the dinner is corporate. The job interview's already done. Jennifer smiled, the kind of smile that didn't reach her eyes and cut glass from a distance. Of course. Just curious. In the second hour, Jennifer passed behind Serena's chair carrying a glass of red wine. The collision was calculated with the precision of someone who rehearsed an accident 4 times in the mirror before executing it. The wine flew in a perfect arc and hit the royal blue dress right in the center of the chest. Serena glanced down. The red stain spread across the fabric like a map of destruction in real time. Oh, forgive me, Jennifer said, her voice coated in a concern so fake it could have been wrapped in plastic. How clumsy of me. Serena grabbed a napkin from the table. Automatically, by instinct, and did the same thing she did every time she tried to clean anything in her life. It got worse. The stain spread, the napkin tore along the edge. The wine trickled down the fabric in thin rivulets, tracing random paths across the dress as if creating abstract art. Excuse me, Serena said. She stood up, gathered the stained dress in both hands, and walked toward the restroom, keeping her posture straight. She was not going to cry. Not going to cry. Absolutely not going to cry. Reaching the restroom, she closed the door and rested her back against the cold marble wall. And then, she cried. Not the loud, angry tears from the park. Not the dramatic crying of someone talking to wooden benches. It was the silent weeping of someone who was in a place where she did not belong, wearing a dress that was not hers, surrounded by people who knew exactly where she did not fit. The restroom door opened. Jennifer walked in, as if the restroom were an extension of her personal parlor. She paced to the mirror, adjusted her diamond necklace, and caught Serena's reflection behind her. Honey, there's no need to cry over a dress. Serena wiped her face with the back of her hand. It was an accident. I know. Of course it was, Jennifer said. She turned, leaning her hip against the marble counter with the casual ease of someone who had rehearsed her speech all week. But do you know what won't be an accident? When the press finds out that Daniel Calloway's new personal assistant is the same Serena Davis who worked at Roger Fonseca's firm. That Roger Fonseca. The one arrested for money laundering. A chill swept through the restroom. I didn't have anything to do with that, Serena said. I know you didn't, honey, but who's going to believe a former employee of a money laundering firm? The press doesn't need proof. They need headlines, and Billionaire hires former employee of criminal scheme is a very good headline. Jennifer tucked a lock of hair behind her ear, her calmness suggesting a piece of advice rather than a threat. You stay away from Daniel, or I'll destroy you both. She smiled once more. It was a smile that didn't reach her eyes, but this time it reached somewhere much deeper. She left the restroom without a backward glance. Serena stood frozen in front of the mirror. The stained dress, the red eyes. Her hands trembled on the edge of the sink. And for the first time since the universe started sabotaging her life, Serena didn't gaze at the sky. She didn't complain to any objects. She didn't make any jokes. Absolute silence claimed the restroom. And Serena Davis's silence was more terrifying than any storm. Serena didn't go to work on Monday, nor on Tuesday. Her phone rang 19 times on Monday, 23 on Tuesday. Each missed call appeared on the screen like a glowing little accusation she didn't have the courage to answer. She didn't run away. She didn't pack her bags. She didn't buy a bus ticket to anywhere. She simply locked her apartment door, drew the curtains, and sat on the sofa with her knees pulled to her chest, wrapped in a blanket that was failing to protect her from absolutely anything. The royal blue dress hung on the hanger behind the bedroom door. The wine stain had dried into a shape that vaguely resembled the map of a country she would never visit. Tissues piled up on the coffee table like a white mountain range of evidence. Serena wasn't running from work. She was running from the fallout. The kind of damage that couldn't be wiped away with a napkin, and she, better than anyone, knew that napkins solved nothing. If Jennifer carried out her threat, the headline would be simple: former employee of money laundering firm hired by billionaire CEO. No detail would matter after that. It wouldn't matter that she had never signed the contract. It wouldn't matter that the pens had failed. It wouldn't matter that the coffee had saved her life that morning. The headline was already written in Serena's head, in giant bold letters, ever since the night of the gala. And beneath the headline, a smaller line that hurt more than anything else: CEO questions hiring after scandal. Her mere presence was going to tarnish Daniel's name. That was the knot no lawyer could untangle. On Wednesday morning, at 9:12, someone knocked on the apartment door. Serena didn't move. The knock came again, firmer. "Serena, it's me." Daniel Calloway's voice cut through the thin apartment door with the clarity of someone accustomed to being heard in boardroom meetings with 60 people. Serena closed her eyes. "Go away." "No. Mr. Calloway, please. Open the door or I'll stay here until the building manager calls someone to remove me." Serena glanced toward the door. She assessed her own situation. Cloud-printed flannel pajamas, her hair messily tied back with an elastic band that was ready to quit. Swollen eyes, red nose, a general appearance of someone who had lost a war against her own pillow. She opened the door. Daniel entered. His dark blue suit contrasted with absolutely everything in the 28-square-meter apartment. He surveyed the room: a tiny kitchen, a living room that doubled as a bedroom and an office. A bookshelf held books piled in a way that defied gravity. A plastic stool next to the sofa served as a side table. Daniel sat on the stool. The stool protested. A sharp crack of plastic screamed, unprepared to support 90 kilograms of billionaire CEO. Daniel adjusted himself carefully, as if negotiating with the furniture. "Does this stool have a weight limit?" "It's got a dignity limit. And you're testing both." Daniel crossed his hands over his knees. His posture was the same one he used in crisis meetings: firm shoulders, straight chin, and unwavering focus. But sitting on a pink plastic stool that creaked for the second time, the effect was slightly compromised. "Tell me." Serena sat on the edge of the sofa. She pulled the blanket up over her shoulders like a wool armor. "Jennifer knows I worked at Roger's firm." Daniel sat perfectly still. "She said if I don't stay away from you, she'll spread it to the press. She'll say I was part of the scheme, that you hired a front, that Nexus is involved." Daniel's jaw tightened. A tiny movement Serena almost missed. "When did she say that?" "In the restroom at the gala, after the wine spilled on the dress." "And why didn't you tell me that night?" Serena pulled the blanket up higher. "Because if I told you, you'd do something, and if you did something, it'd be because of me. And if it were because of me, I'd be the cause of the problem." Again, one more time. "Another company, another mess, another person paying the price for having me around." Her voice cracked on the last sentence, not loudly, quietly, like a guitar string giving way when the tension exceeds the limit. Daniel stood up from the stool, which let out a relieved sigh of plastic, and sat beside her on the sofa. Not too close, but close enough. He held her by the shoulders, firmly, the kind of firmness that is not meant to control but to anchor. "You're not going to hide. The universe put you in my car by mistake that day so I could protect you. And that's exactly what I'm going to do." Serena faced him. Red-rimmed eyes and a soft sniffle gave away her distress. Her mouth trembled in a way she detested and couldn't control. "What if the evidence doesn't exist?" "It exists." Daniel pulled his phone from his pocket. He speed-dialed a number. "Marcus, I want the original security footage from Roger Fonseca's office. The recording of the day Serena Davis was fired. The day of the pens and the coffee. Maximum priority. Have the legal team on standby until this is in my hands." The call lasted 40 seconds. When he hung up, he pocketed the phone with the calm of someone who had just made a chess move, calculated 3 steps ahead. Serena held his gaze. "Did you already know the cameras existed?" "I knew Roger's company had an internal monitoring system. Every firm of that size does. The recordings were requested by the federal investigation, but backup copies remain on the servers for 5 years. My digital intelligence team can access the public copies of the lawsuit in 48 hours. Did you think of that before coming here?" "I thought of it the night of the gala." Serena opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. "Then why did you come here?" Daniel shifted his attention to his hands, then met her eyes. "Because the video proves you're innocent. But I needed to hear what happened from you. Not from the video. From you." Silence descended upon the apartment, the kind of silence that has weight, that occupies space, that makes the ticking of the kitchen clock sound far too loud. Daniel's phone vibrated. A message from Marcus. Recordings located. Preliminary analysis. Images clearly show the candidate refusing to sign documents. Defective pens visible. Coffee spilled by accident. Summary dismissal recorded. Candidate leaves the building crying with a box of belongings. Conclusion. Zero involvement. Daniel showed the screen to Serena. Serena read it, reread it, and for the third time her chin trembled. The universe and the pens, she whispered. Daniel almost smiled. Almost. And then Daniel's phone vibrated again. But this time it wasn't Marcus. It was Helena. Call now. Urgent. Jennifer made an anonymous report to the police. They're saying Serena is an accomplice in Roger's money laundering scheme. A sensationalist article just went online. The police are on their way to her address with a search warrant. Daniel stood up from the sofa. Serena watched his expression shift, not to anger, to something more controlled, colder. The face of a CEO who commands 17 subsidiaries and doesn't lose a single cent without an answer. What's wrong? She asked. 3 knocks hit the door, loud, spaced apart, the kind of knocking that doesn't come from neighbors asking for sugar. Police, search warrant. Open the door, please. Serena turned to Daniel. Daniel's folks snapped to the door, and the pink plastic stool, which had survived a billionaire CEO, remained in the corner, silent, witnessing the most tense moment those 4 walls had ever seen. Daniel opened the door before Serena could move. On the other side stood 2 police officers with professional expressions and a manila envelope containing a warrant with Serena Davis's full name printed in letters that seemed to scream. Search warrant, the taller of the 2 said. Regarding an allegation of involvement in a money laundering scheme. We need the resident to accompany us. Serena felt her legs go numb. The kind of numbness that starts in the knees and climbs to the stomach, taking everything useful along with it. She's not going anywhere. Daniel's voice wasn't that of the polite driver in traffic. It wasn't the voice of the delivery man in the lobby. It was the voice of the CEO who negotiated $200 million contracts with people who didn't blink. He pulled his phone from his pocket and made a call. Marcus, I'm at the address. The police are here. Bring the legal team and the flash drive with the material. Now, he hung up. He faced the officers with the calm of someone who knew the next 20 minutes would change everything. Officers, is this report anonymous? The officer consulted the document. Yes, sir, an anonymous report. And the supporting evidence accompanying the report? The officer flipped through the pages. Just the report, sir. No supporting evidence attached. Daniel nodded as if that information confirmed what he already knew before the door was opened. In 12 minutes, my legal team will present you with an original, authenticated, and forensic-examined security recording that unequivocally shows Serena Davis did not sign any documents from Roger Fonseca's company. The recording shows her refusal to sign, the accident that destroyed the contract, and the summary dismissal she suffered as a consequence. The anonymous accuser is Jennifer Ashford, my ex-fiancée, who personally threatened Serena in the restroom of the Grand Meridian Hotel 4 days ago. I have 3 eyewitnesses who saw Jennifer Ashford intentionally spill wine on my assistant's dress that same night. The officers exchanged glances. The 12 minutes were 11. A black car pulled up in front of the building, and 2 lawyers stepped out, carrying leather briefcases and looking like they charged $600 an hour and deserved every penny. Marcus handed the flash drive to the officer with the formality of someone delivering a checkmate. The recording played on the lead lawyer's tablet right there in the narrow hallway of Serena's building, between a fake potted plant and the condominium bulletin board. On the screen, Serena Davis sitting across from Roger Fonseca. Roger pushing the contract. Serena picking up the pen failing. Another pen, failing. Another, failing. Roger yelling, Serena bumping the cup, coffee spilling all over the contract, Roger pointing to the door. Serena leaving with the cardboard box and red eyes. 0 signatures, 0 involvement, 0 guilt. The officer watched standing up, his hands crossed behind his back. When the recording ended, he slipped the warrant back into the manila envelope. The search warrant is void. We'll open an investigation into the false report. If the facts are confirmed, the accuser will answer for slander, defamation, and malicious prosecution. The officer pocketed the envelope, gave Daniel a formal nod, and walked down the stairs. Serena stood frozen for 8 seconds. Then she met Daniel's gaze. The pens, Daniel nodded. The pens. The coffee. The coffee. Serena rested her head against the wall and tilted her face toward the hallway ceiling. Universe, you kept this on video all this time and didn't let me know? The ceiling didn't answer. But this time, the silence felt less indifferent. Jennifer Ashford was arrested the following night. The news broke on all platforms with the kind of headline she loved to threaten: socialite arrested for false report and defamation against billionaire CEO's assistant. The irony tasted like poetic justice with a champagne topping. On Friday, Serena returned to Nexus Holdings. She stepped into the lobby, and Clara and Denise stood up from the reception desk at the exact same time. Not to clock her in, to applaud. A polite, receptionist-style applause that lasted exactly 5 seconds, making Serena's eyes glisten with the kind of shine that comes when someone is making a superhuman effort not to cry again, but this time for a completely different reason. Serena walked to the elevator. On her desk, next to the computer and the pen she had tested 3 times before trusting, Gerald, the plastic cactus that had escaped Roger's company in a cardboard box, stood firm, a survivor, right where she had placed him on her first day. The executive elevator arrived. She pressed the button, waited for the doors to slide open, and stepped inside. This time, she didn't drag anyone out. She held the door with a smile, waiting for Daniel to arrive. He arrived. In a charcoal gray suit, wearing a half smile. His leather briefcase tucked under his arm was definitely not a delivery package. They rode up together to the penthouse. The table was set on the helipad, an improvised white tablecloth. Paper napkins, plastic cups. In the center, 5 giant tubs of ice cream glistened under the city lights as if they had been ordered by Mr. George himself. Gale sat at the head of the table with the clipboard in his lap, already on his second scoop, with ice cream on his nose and fingers and a smile that could light up 3 city blocks. Helena sat beside him, trying to wipe her son's mouth with a napkin that he dodged with the agility of a 6-year-old ninja. "Ice cream, lady," Gale shouted upon seeing Serena. "You're back. I saved the chocolate one for you." He adopted a serious face. "I mean, I only tasted a little bit. To make sure it was good." The chocolate tub was half empty. "A little bit," Helena said, raising an eyebrow. Serena sat at the table. She picked up a spoon and took her first bite of ice cream, with the kind of pleasure only someone who knows what it is to give away their last scoop of ice cream to a stranger could understand. Daniel sat beside her. Close, without the professional distance he had promised to maintain. "Strictly professional," Serena murmured, spoon in mouth. "Completely," Daniel said, with no intention of being honest. After the ice cream, when Gale was officially defeated by the sugar overload in Helena's lap, and the city lights twinkled below as if the entire world were watching, Daniel led Serena to the edge of the helipad. The view was breathtaking, the kind of view that didn't seem real. Skyscrapers, avenues, thousands of lit windows, with thousands of lives happening at once, and up there, 2 tiny figures standing at the edge of it all. Daniel reached into the inner pocket of his jacket. He pulled out something small, light, twinkling under the soft lights, an earring, a cheap one, the kind you buy at a local corner shop for $2 a pair. Serena's focus shifted to the earring, then met Daniel's gaze. "You kept it, since the first day, in the pocket of every suit jacket." Serena took the earring, her fingers trembling. She spun it in her hands the same way Daniel had spun it between his fingers that night in the car, when she had run out of the restaurant and vanished around the corner. "I used to believe that everything in the world was the result of control and statistics," Daniel said. "But the day you invaded my car proved that the universe has the best algorithm of all." Daniel pulled a box from his other pocket, small, velvet, the exact size of a question that changes an entire life. He opened it. Serena inspected the ring, faced Daniel, and then turned her gaze to the sky. "Okay, universe," she said, her voice cracking as the widest smile her face could manage broke out. "This time, you've outdone yourself." Daniel slid the ring onto her finger. Serena gathered his face in both hands and kissed him, as if thanking every defective pen, every traffic jam, every bird with digestive issues, every scoop of ice cream given away, and every car door opened by mistake that had brought her there. Helena watched from the table, with Gale asleep in her lap. "Mommy," Gale murmured, half asleep. "Did Uncle pull it off?" Helena smiled. "He did, my love." Daniel offered a napkin for Serena to wipe her tears. She inspected the napkin, then faced him. "No, I've already learned my lesson, and she laughed, the kind of laugh that heals things. On the penthouse of Nexus Holdings, with the entire city twinkling below, Serena rested her head against the shoulder of the man she had called driver, delivery man, employee, and finally Daniel. He opened the car door for her for the first time on purpose when they went down, and she climbed into the front seat, as if she had always belonged there. On the way home, with the streetlight glow sweeping across the windshield in rhythmic intervals, Serena glanced out the window and whispered to the stars, "Thank you, universe, and sorry for screaming at the broken pens." The stars did not answer, but they twinkled, and perhaps that is exactly what life is. Sometimes what feels like a delay is protection. Sometimes what feels like bad luck is the universe clearing from our path what was never meant to stay. And sometimes love appears in the most unlikely way, in the wrong car, at the wrong moment, only to put everything in the right place. Serena taught us that not every disaster is the end, that some blessings arrive disguised as chaos, and that life can completely change when we stop fighting the path and start trusting it. If you have ever gone through something similar, remember, some doors close because much larger ones are trying to find you. The end.